Welcome to Newslaundry Chhota Hafta. For the full episode, subscribe because it is behind the paywall and only subscribers get access to uncut, complete content. Newslaundry Hafta is our weekly wrap of all that made the news, all that didn't, and all that should have and all that shouldn't have. We agree, we disagree, we critique, and occasionally we beat each other up. But it's all good fun. Subscribe.
This is a Newslaundry podcast and you're listening to NL Hafta.
Hello and welcome to Newslaundry Hafta. Angrez apna lagan or Newslaundry apna hafta kabhi nahi bhulte. I'm going to be your host this week because Abhinandan is a little busy. Our hearing on the India Today case is actually going as we record the show, so he's attending that. He may join us if it finishes, but in the meantime, you have to deal with me and Meghnad.
Hi.
He's replacing Abhinandan.
Yes. No, you are replacing
I'm replacing Abhinandan. Yeah, you're the male replacement.
I'm the side character.
The filler.
Yeah.
Meghnad is with me in the studio. We have Raman sir joining us from his house. Hi sir, how are you?
Hi.
I hope you've recovered well and fine.
Well, I'm fine. My mother is down.
Okay. Has she tested positive or?
I've just got the test done. So she's, I think the result is going to come by evening or.
So we are still
morning.
under lockdown. We have two very exciting guests joining us today, but they're not going to join us at the same time. We have two different topics that we're going to be discussing. So the first guest is Sumaiya Shaikh. Hi, Sumaiya.
Hi.
You're joining us from Sweden.
I am in Sydney right now.
Oh,
I'm
you're in
visiting
Sydney.
my parents.
Is that a real beach behind you? Or is that a
Yes,
wallpaper?
I took this photo a couple of days ago.
Okay.
She put a photo behind her. Yeah.
So those of you who are wondering what we're talking about, we can see Sumaiya in the video and there's like a really beautiful wallpaper behind us, which I thought is maybe like a Windows thing, but it's a real picture she took. And she's in Sydney right now. Great. Sumaiya is the founder, editor of Alt News Science. She works as a neuroscientist in Sweden. She holds a PhD in medicine from Sydney. And her current research is in biology, psychiatry to study the human brain during violent extremism. Very fascinating topics. In fact, we should have her on board to talk about that sometime. But anyway.
Yeah.
Before we get into the conversation this week, I just have a couple of announcements to make. One, we have a new subscription plan. It's called the Game Changer for 3 years. So with rupees 28,000, you can be a game changer for 3 years. That means you get access to everything on Newslaundry, behind the paywall content. Basically, you're getting 8,000 rupee ka discount with this, and you're also getting a lot of free merch. So please check out our new subscription plan, Game Changer, 3 years for rupees 28,000. We have a new page for subscribers to send our letters. So please start sending our letters there. It's called newslaundry.com/podcast-letter. We also have a new mail for podcast letters. So please write to us on the mail. It's podcasts@newslaundry.com. You can mention in the subject the podcast to which you want to write. We will be checking that out for all your letters. We have an NL Sena project up, which is very exciting. I'm also part of it. So is Meghnad.
Yes.
We're going to be covering the Assembly elections 2022. There are 5 states to cover: Goa, Manipur, Punjab, Uttarakhand and Uttar Pradesh. So we'll be coming to your states. We will be doing videos, reports, interviews. Atul, Meghnad and I will actually be traveling together. And the 3 of us are coming up with a new election show. How exciting is that? And this is obviously going to require a lot of support because we also have reporters, Akanksha, Ashwin, Ayush, Basan, Nidhi, Pratik and Shivangi, who will be hitting the ground in different parts of these states.
And the producers.
And of course, the producers also. So we have a lot of people hitting the ground. We want to do a really good job with this, and this costs money. And as you know, we are completely ad-free. We don't take any money. We only depend on our subscribers. So please power our NL Sena project. We want to raise a little more than 23 lakh rupees. We've only raised around 4 lakh rupees, close to 5 lakh. Yeah. So please step up. It's just $1,000. So if you can, even like if 50 people, give us $1,000, that's a lot to
that's
power.
A lot
yeah.
And also it's a very long election.
It's a long
February
election, yeah.
10th to 7th.
And because it's COVID, we can't really slum it out in the sense we can't, just bus it to a place. We will have to, I guess, take cabs in many places because people still, they stay with their families and all. And we are still in the midst of a wave, so we need to be careful about, how we travel. So it's a bit cost intensive, but please support it. Please tell your friends to support it. And like I said, just $1,000. If a lot of people can contribute a little, it'll be enough for us. So even if you can't put in, 45 grand, 50 grand, which is totally acceptable, try and spread the word out so that we get little contributions. और क्या बोलते हैं वो बूंद से सागर बन जाएगा. So please do that. We have an NL chat box session on January 22nd at 7 p.m. This is only for subscribers, as you know. It's a subscriber-only event, so please join us on January 22nd, which is a Saturday at 7 p.m. You're probably listening to this
On
the same day on Saturday. So please, if you're hearing this right now, just log on quickly at 7 p.m. and join us on our chat. We have new hoodie out, NL merch. We have a new sweatshirt.
Which you made me wear for Nuisance today.
Yeah, and which Abhinandan's also done a little photo shoot with it. So this is part of, it's a weekly launch. So you can be buying that. It's going to be up on our website very soon. And please check out NL Playoffs on Saturday. This is a special sports podcast, and we have Sharda Ugra, who I think is the most excellent journalist. She covers sports, she covers cricket especially, and she's really a delight to read, and she's really fun, and she has lots of anecdotes. They're going to be discussing Virat Kohli's resignation and Sania Mirza's retirement. So please tune into NL Playoffs if you're a sports buff. And let's get to the headlines quickly.
Okay, so India reports 3.17 lakh new COVID cases, 491 deaths. Total Omicron cases are 9,287 on Thursday. We are recording this on Thursday, January 20th at 3 p.m. Avoid steroids, get tested for TB if cough persists. This is the center's new COVID guidelines. They are saying that doctors treating patients with coronavirus disease should avoid prescribing steroids and get them tested for tuberculosis if there is severe cough. Mumbai had moved past the peak, and the daily COVID-19 case count was expected to fall further over the coming days. Schools across Maharashtra will be reopened from Monday. Kerala has witnessed the third wave due to Omicron variant. Next 3 weeks will be crucial, is what the health minister has said. Now we come to some assembly election news. In Uttar Pradesh, Akhilesh Yadav is set to contest his first assembly election. And Aparna Yadav, which is his sister-in-law, she has joined the BJP. There's a lot of commentary going on about that.
Akhilesh said we really tried to convince her. She didn't listen. And meanwhile, the deputy CM Maurya called him a failed family man. So a lot of drama.
Yeah. The first candidate declared against Uttar Pradesh Chief Minister Yogi Adityanath in Gorakhpur is Bhim Army Chief Chandrasekhar Azad. That would be quite interesting. Bhagwant Mann has been declared as the AAP's chief ministerial candidate for the next month.
Maybe we can discuss that a bit ahead.
Yeah, and he will contest from Dhuri Assembly seat, which is his home turf of Sangrur. This is according to news agency ANI. In Goa elections as well, Aam Aadmi Party has named Amit Palekar as the chief ministerial candidate. He's an activist and a lawyer, relatively unknown name. UP Deputy Chief Minister KP Maurya will contest from the upcoming elections from Sirathu, which is in Kaushambi. Late CDS Bipin Rawat's brother Vijay Rawat has joined the BJP.
An app with BJP footprints for cyber troops to automate hate and manipulate trends. That is the TekFog investigation that we're going to be discussing quite in detail. Punjab CM has had raids at his nephew's house. He said this is a conspiracy to trap me. Meanwhile, there's been some cash found on him, and Arvind Kejriwal has also attacked him and said कि तुम आदमाद नहीं हो, तुम whatever हो.
कुछ sand mafia का भी कुछ निकल रहा है वहाँ पे.
Channi has said भूल गए अपने दिन. Anyway, UN Indian envoy to UN says recognize Hindu phobia and violence against Buddhist Sikhs too. And in a very, very shocking case, Franco Molokal, who's been accused of raping a nun, has been acquitted. And there's actually an online campaign happening where a lot of people are writing letters to the nuns saying that they support them, letters of solidarity. And next week, we're going to have Nisha Susan on board to discuss this.
Supreme Court ex-judge Rohinton Nariman has said that it's time to completely do away with the sedition law. Chinese army has abducted a 17-year-old boy from the Indian territory. That is the claim made by Arunachal BJP. An MP from Arunachal BJP.
And it's got very little coverage anywhere on news, television news.
And the army is currently in touch with the PLA over the missing young person. Rahul has called out the Prime Minister for his silence on this.
Thanks a lot, Meghnad, for that.
Yeah, I think it's a bit of a stretch to even call it mild or not way earlier at the time. And of course, we're going to see more mild symptoms or infections because vaccine is supposed to make it mild. I mean, how can we forget that we took the vaccine not because we would never get the infection. We took the vaccine so that we could get a mild infection. So a lot of the people are supporting it as mild. At least they've had 1 or 2 doses of the vaccine. Even if it's been like 6 months ago, they've at least had the vaccine. Secondly, because there are so many vaccines and so many vaccinated people around us, there's a lesser amount of transmission as well. So we're not kind of infecting everybody that we know. For example, if we've been infected and we have some residual immunity, and if we've been vaccinated and say 2 or 3 months later, we still have a good amount of immunity and we don't get an infection right away. So that is when, you're protecting other people, you're reducing that transmission. So how do you predict that it is mild? Because majority of the people in at least these places are vaccinated. So that is why people might be saying it's mild, but it's not mild in theory if nobody was vaccinated, nobody had an infection, because the type of the mutation here is slightly different than the Delta one. Delta has mostly spike mutations, which allows the entry of the virus into the cell a lot more easier. But here we have something that is not exactly a part of the spike protein. So a third of the mutations in the Omicron variant is actually outside. And that is why, how Delta was a lot, it was easier to deal with the Pfizer or the mRNA vaccine, the Pfizer or Moderna vaccines. But with the Omicron, there is better data with the AstraZeneca or Covishield-like vaccines, which is great because a lot of the people in India have actually had AstraZeneca or Covishield. We don't have specific distribution with Covaxin data yet. I'm pretty sure it's going to be a good vaccine. They just need to release good data on a lot regular basis. But as far as AstraZeneca or Covishield goes, we do have good data, and it's actually better working with the Omicron variant. So the best idea is to get a booster dose of AstraZeneca or a booster dose of Pfizer if you're taking 2 doses of AstraZeneca. So mix and match either. And that is when your immunity will be really high against both Delta and Omicron variants.
Whoa.
So
Yeah,
I was Raman sir?
No, I said I took Covaxin, and I got it for the second time, but it was pretty mild. I mean, just 2 days of fever, and then after 5 days I was fine.
Yeah, and he's getting it for the second time. So,
So I mean, I'm
Yeah.
a Covaxin.
Raman sir, you got booster shot, no?
No.
Oh.
I just took 2 shots.
Covishield, right?
Okay. When was your last shot?
Mine last was in May 2021.
Yeah. So Covaxin is a very good advantage because you're taking the whole virus, you're inactivating it, or you're kind of reducing its power, or you're inactivating the virus, and then if you give the whole virus, so basically you're producing antibodies against all of the proteins in there. So it's not like mRNA was specifically for spike protein, and that was what we thought that was going to mutate. But now, so we see all these other mutations that is outside. Some of them on the actual shell of the virus, which is not a part of the spike protein. That is when you see Covaxin will be a lot more beneficial. But again, great vaccine. Why don't they get good amount of data? Why don't they do the trials correctly? And that is my problem with that. Otherwise, I really have a lot of faith in the whole virion vaccine. It really has good potential. We're pushing the whole virus in there. You're technically supposed to protect yourself from every single proteins that are out there on the virus. So pretty much all the new mutations that will come in the future, in theory, you might be protected against them.
So my question was about the booster shots. You already mentioned it that it would be a good idea to mix and match vaccines and take another booster shot. But is that like a mandated thing in most countries now, or is it like just still an advisory?
So booster shot, it is a good thing to get one. So if you've had your second dose 6 months or before, it's a good idea to get a booster. I just got mine 3 days before. I also got a Pfizer. The only reason that people are not getting AstraZeneca in younger women in these countries is there's a lot of fear around, blood coagulations and stuff like that. But, a huge amount of the population in the UK has gotten AstraZeneca or Covishield. A lot of women in India have got Covishield. So, yes, it has some very small chances where you could produce these blood clots, but the risk is 0.00016%. I remember this number. It is a very, very small risk. As opposed to getting COVID, it's a huge risk. So, you always weigh out the risks and benefits. The booster shot is highly, highly recommended. I have seen the data where if you don't take a booster shot, both with Covishield or AstraZeneca and with the Pfizer, your immunity drops like significantly. So there was like 800 and something on the unit of the immunity antibody release scale in your body. And after 6 months or so, it dropped to like 20 or 30s. And then once you get a booster shot, it then raised again. The problem was that with the Omicron variant, the Pfizer antibodies were not going as high as it was for the Delta variant. So that was the only thing. But it was pretty high. It was high enough to protect you. So when I got my Pfizer shot here, because that was what I got, I basically got what I could get. I didn't have a choice either. I just went there and, they gave me whatever was available. So that was fine for me. But it's still good enough to protect you.
But this flu, you said the flu comparison is bad, but I have been saying this a lot too, that, it's just going to become like a common cold.
Yeah.
In a year, we should just, is there no chances of that happening? This just becoming, it's just becoming like one of the, like even with dengue, when it first came, it was just this dreadful, horrible thing. And then within 10 years...
dreadful, horrible thing.
I know, but within 10 years, the fear of it was gone. We figured out how to fight it. Most cases, if detected early, you can still be, it's not life-threatening.
No, that's not entirely true, actually. With dengue, they have 4 variants or 4 different types of viruses or subcategories. And if you get infected with one, it's a very good chance that the next one's going to be more and more like harder on you. And the more times you get it, the less likelihood of...
Sure, and every season, every like dengue season, you call it in Delhi, you do have a lot of deaths being reported. But what I mean, it's not that we figured out how to cure it, and there's good like medical data available on what you need to do immediately if you're detected with it, what are the symptoms, and we've it's not a fear like it used to be. So can't COVID also reach that level finally?
I guess there is a bit of a fear as well. But I'm hoping, I'm really sincerely hoping that is what the end result of this is, because everyone's really tired of it. The problem is that because of the systematic aspect of the infection, if somebody, I've heard people getting long COVID for about a year or more, even with a mild infection, you can get long COVID if you're prone to. So those are like a lot more implications. So dengue, 3 years later or 2 years later, you can't say, oh, I'm still infected, or I have to feel the impact of it. But here, people's lives getting destroyed. People are, unable to work for months altogether. Some people in sports, especially, they aren't able to maintain the same limits as they used to have back then. So for a lot of people, this is very devastating. And I really hope that at the end of the day, it becomes as, minor as a common cold. But I think we're far off from that. At the moment, all we can do is we have about 6 months period until like the northern hemisphere people, will go into summer, and that is where the new chances of a new variant or a new infections will come out. And before that, we need to make sure everybody gets vaccinated. And now we can't just think about ourselves anymore. Now, recently there was a member of parliament here, a minister of health here, who talked about how we should be less selfish and look at it as a global community. No way we can just think about, okay, let's get India vaccinated and we'll be okay. Or Australia is 90%, we're fine. No, the Omicron came from South Africa. The Omicron came from Botswana. How do we tackle those things? It will still keep coming if there is this type of vaccine inequity. All of these Pfizer mRNA people or AstraZeneca people, they need to, AstraZeneca has kind of done it in one way, but why isn't Pfizer mRNA releasing their formula? They should just make it accessible to everybody. And, they've earned enough. My contention with these people, the pharmaceutical industry, is that they should make it more and more accessible. It's time to stop making money now. They've already done that. It's time to stop people from dying now.
Wow. Saying this to pharma companies is, I don't know. It's time to stop making money. Raman sir, do you have any questions for Sumaiya?
Sumaiya, there are people like Djokovic who do not want to be vaccinated at all.
Yeah, I want to come to that.
This was very big in Australia.
Oh,
recently.
yeah.
So how do you view this?
Yeah, so first of all, just to continue on that point, I wrote this critique primarily because of that point. Even when I was discussing with other friends, someone were like, "Tumhe kya maza aa raha hai, dusre ke piece ko criticize karne," right? And I was like, and I have seen this in my 6 years of journalism that, within journalistic groups, we critique others' work. We say, that piece is bad, or, that reporter does these things. And we don't tell it to our readers. I have no idea, why should this be privileged information for journalists?
Yeah.
Which is why, I really like that Newslaundry does sort of media critique, and also the informed media critique, right? So that's where I was coming from. And after I wrote the piece, some people started saying, "Oh, you are a tech expert." I said, "No, boss, I am no expert. I am a journalist." And this was a journalistic critique. Even if you see the piece, the flavor of it is based on evidence, right? And that's what the critique is about, that The Wire came up with this 3-part series. I read it. I have covered the space. And I, whenever I read, especially an investigation, I try to think about like how each and every claim was made. Like my editors question me inside the newsroom, or, even freelance work. That is the approach I take. And then you start, you can start reverse engineering. Okay, what would this process have taken? Would I write that, in my story or not? All of those sorts of things. And the more and more I read the Wire piece, I just felt that they did not have enough evidence to make claims that they were making. And my piece basically picks like three broad categories. I picked up, the arguments they had made and told my readers what is the evidence that they're using, and then explain why I think that evidence is not strong enough to make those claims. So that is like the outline of the piece.
Do you want to quickly get in and tell our listeners, it's a long piece, but maybe you can take out two of the most things that you found were very glaring and for which you felt that,
Yeah. So I think the first one was quite obvious, which was that the piece claims that this app allows its operatives to create and delete social media accounts like in one click. They clearly say that they can't verify it, but just thinking about this, it's like a really big claim. Like, I mean, it's so irritating to deactivate or delete a Facebook account if you've ever tried it, right? And now you're telling me that I just press a button and like 100 accounts will be deleted, right? So unless you have exploited like a bug in Facebook's, system, or Facebook has given you a privileged backdoor, right? Some kind of conspiracy going on. Like, just I have an engineering background, so I just could not imagine like how will you enable this process? And that is a automatic question that should raise. Like tomorrow, if I write a story saying I have heard rumors that Rahul Gandhi is joining the BJP, right? I mean, you say it's possible, but automatically you'll imagine that this is too outlandish for us to imagine this is happening. So the burden of proof for making these claims is higher. So that was like one point of critique. The second, and I think this was a big part of the investigation, was about the hijacking of and manipulation of Twitter trends, right? And this was very interesting and tricky because we know this happens, right? We have seen this happening. So the claim that the story was making was now we have this secret app which basically automates a lot of this process, which is also, technically possible, right? And like one person can manage thousands of accounts. Again, not beyond the realm of technological possibility. But from there, which is like sketching out this world, to the evidence that is presented to say this is happening, that I felt was not enough, because the authors deploy this large scale, social media analysis to show that, to independently verify that what this source was telling them is true. But just diving into the methodology, the way the assumptions that they had made, like that to me were not convincing enough. And in my piece, and I also discussed this with authors, instead of diving into the specifics of the algorithm, which can become a very technical debate, I use common sense intuition that, what needs to be true for this to be true. And there, as I figured out in my conversation with authors, there are a lot of cases where even if it's not originating from the specific app, they would also count those cases in their analysis, right? So, for example, if, there's just a programmer who just writes a script to automate, BJP circulates these sheets, and that person gets that sheet and writes some code to put out 100 tweets. So that guy will also be like TekFog, right? So we don't know. There's so much uncertainty around it. And I didn't know that you can use this to then claim that, this viral Twitter chart about a woman journalists getting like so many abusive replies from this one app.
Manisha was one of them.
Yeah. And so when I asked them, and I think that was so interesting because the authors told me that actually TekFog is not one app, which was the big revelation for me while doing the story. It's basically an ecosystem of, so to say, computational propaganda. So it's just, as I thought about it and read the piece again, I was just not convinced that there is this something that exists that's so miraculous that can do all of those things. So that was I think my second point of critique. And last, quickly,
I have one small point to add here. So because
yes.
I interviewed the authors, and before I interviewed the authors, I had read your piece, right?
Sure.
So I also tried to pose the questions in my own way to them. And I asked them this same questions. And right at the beginning, I said, I'm not going to call it an app because it's already questionable whether it is an app. So I just called it some sort of a platform. I spoke to them specifically about this point about, if I'm sharing a Google Sheet and they share this link, I click on it, it goes to one of my accounts and I tweet it. Is that TekFog? Right. So that's the simple thing that we already know that the BJP IT cell and many IT cells do. It's like a marketing tactic, right? So they said that actually TekFog adds a level of human intervention to an largely automated process. What it means is they get sheets from one source. Then there are these dynamic lists of database of people who they have to target, quote unquote, like the names, right? Like female journalists, males over 40, fair-skinned people, etc. Now, the job of the operative, and they kept using the word operative, is to connect that sheet with the people who have to be abused or, the trend that has to be done. So that is what the job of this quote-unquote platform is. So the operators there, they are acting as sort of ह्यूमन इंटेलिजेंस टू सी क्या ट्रेंड कर रहा है ट्विटर पे, इसको क्या काउंटर करना है और इसके लिए कौन सा शीट लगेगा. So their job is to connect the dots more or less. That is what they explained to me. Right? So, I mean, I will leave that to you now.
All of you listening in, the Chhota Hafta, do subscribe so you can listen to the entire Hafta. We will see you again next week with the Hafta. Till then, subscribe, pay to keep news free, because when the public pays, the public is served. When advertisers pay, advertisers are served. Thank you. Goodbye.
All the Newslaundry podcasts are available on Stitcher, iTunes, and any other podcast platform.
Please subscribe to Newslaundry. Help us keep news independent. To catch all our podcasts on news, pop culture, current affairs, and sport, visit newslaundry.com. Follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Sun liya Afrika, mufat khoro. Not to brag or anything, but Newslaundry Hafta features in the top 50 in the world on SoundCloud in the news and politics category for podcasts. So do subscribe and see what you're missing, because when the public pays, the public is served. When advertisers pay, advertisers are served. Subscribe, help keep news independent and free. All Newslaundry podcasts are available on iTunes and Stitcher and any other podcast platform.